In this video, I want to talk about the Detroit mom, Brandi Pierce, who took the life of her son, Zemar, and then buried him in the backyard.
His remains were found buried in a backyard at a home in January. The boy's mother was charged with his murder on February 5th.
7 investigator Ross Jones is revealing internal CPS records, raising serious questions about what officials did and did not do when they heard alarming claims about the child's safety.
We identified some human remains, someone small in stature. Extremely sad day.
The scene at Woodingham and St. Martin's in Detroit was enough to shake even career police officers. The body of a child found buried in a shallow grave.
This case is rather shocking. In my 27-year career, I don't remember seeing anything like this.
It took days for officers to determine that the boy was 9-year-old Zemar King, murdered, prosecutors say, by his mother, Brandi Pierce.
It's alleged that she purchased a shovel. She bound him by tying his hands and feet together. She then put him in this hole and covered him with dirt.
But as by law, records from Children's Protective Services are guarded closely, even after a child dies. But we've obtained internal CPS records that show state employees were warned for years that Zemar was in danger. At least 4 times, records show, Brandi Pierce was the subject of CPS complaints, the first coming in 2015, after Pierce admitted to marijuana and alcohol use during her first trimester. It happened, she said, before she decided to keep Zemar. There were complaints in 2019 and 2021, both alleging that Zemar had been left alone. The first time, in the lobby of a Southfield apartment building, with Zemar telling police he did not know where he belonged. Police later made contact with a relative, and the complaint was denied. 2 years later, on a 78-degree day in May, Zemar was left alone in his mother's locked car for more than 90 minutes while she went to a doctor's appointment. She told police her son was a heavy sleeper and claimed doctors wouldn't let him into her appointment.
It's the pattern, right? Here is a mom, again, where she's repeatedly reported by different people in the community.
Frank Vandervoort is a law professor at the University of Michigan and a longtime child welfare advocate who said Pierce's pattern of behavior and the disclosure that she was receiving mental health services on an almost daily basis should have been a red flag to CPS.
That suggests to me a very severe level of mental health need. I'm troubled by that, and it raises more questions than it answers for us.
The Macomb County prosecutor denied a warrant request for child abuse, saying there was insufficient evidence and CPS working with mom. CPS would close the case after performing a home visit, finding no safety hazards, enough food, and suitable sleeping arrangements. Then, last April, came the 4th complaint to CPS. This time, Pierce would come here to this Plymouth Hospital emergency room, reporting she was anxious and depressed. Pierce told CPS she had a breakdown and felt herself going into a panic attack. She was questioning whether she should give up custody of one of her children. She'd been evicted from a motel, she said. Her car was repossessed. She was completely out of funds. Once she left the hospital, she and her kids would be sleeping on the street.
On its own, how serious is that?
Critical. This is a family with no place to live. She tells the caseworker, I can't sleep in my car, which suggests to me that she's been sleeping in her car at some points.
But what Zemar told CPS was most alarming of all. He had not been to school in over a year, he said, and doesn't always have food to eat. He said his mother beat him with a belt, that she's choked him with her hands, and that she wants to kill him.
Any rational, normal person walking out on the street hearing this would be completely alarmed by what they're hearing. They would take action. They would call the police.
But what CPS did, according to internal records, was close the case. The investigation found no preponderance of evidence of physical neglect. Pierce was provided with pamphlets connecting her with community services, and a note was added to follow up on her mental health appointments. 6 months later, after Zemar reported that his mother choked and wanted to kill him, prosecutors say she did.
It's alleged that she killed him and that the cause of death found by the medical examiner was smothering and neck compression.
CPS records show that the family was placed at a homeless shelter after that final complaint last April. It is not clear how long they were there. Then in December, Brandi Pierce was found in Georgia. She was arrested after someone reported finding her other child, a 3-year-old, locked in a car alone. Police said temperatures were in the 40s, the child was nude, and there was feces and a deflated air mattress in the vehicle.
Based on the information in that video, you can see that Child Protective Services did fail Zemar. His mother is 100% responsible for ending his life, and then she should be held accountable for that. But the Child Protective Services did not do their job when it comes to Zemar. They was already aware of the mental conditions of his mother. They was already aware of the things that she did in the past that put his life in danger. And based on what he stated to them, that she has choked him before and that she threatened to take his life. Someone should have intervened in that situation to prevent that from happening, to prevent his life from ending. And then they see with her second child, she was basically just repeating the same pattern by leaving that child in the car with no clothes on in cold weather. So she wasn't fit to be able to take care of her kids. And they should have known that and seen that by her actions and stepped in and did something about it.
Today, we are focusing on the challenges facing Child Protective Services workers. 5-year-old AJ Friend was found dead in Illinois in April, and his parents were charged with murder.
Afterward, we started looking into how something like this could allegedly happen despite previous interventions by police and child welfare workers. We discovered hundreds of American children known to CPS agencies die of maltreatment every year. CTM national correspondent Jerika Duncan set out to learn why. Jerika, what did you find out?
You know, this is why we do what we do as journalists, to really delve into important issues. We spent a day with a Child Protective Services caseworker in Outagamie County, Wisconsin. What we witnessed was disturbing, heartbreaking, and real. For the protection of the children, we agreed to hide the parents' identities. This is a story about the challenges facing the men and women tasked with ensuring the safety of children across this country.
Relapse is my biggest concern.
This woman is pregnant with her 5th child and admits using methamphetamines as recently as 2 weeks ago.
There's not much I can do.
It's Brittany Plowman's job to determine whether the kids living here are in danger.
I have some packets of information, one for each child.
As a caseworker for the Children, Youth, and Families Division in Outagamie County, Wisconsin, Plowman has already helped by putting 2 of the kids in daycare, where one just took her first steps.
She walked, and I didn't get to be there.
It's difficult that you got to miss out on that.
It is.
So this is a typical day for you.
Yeah, multiple of these back to back, but yeah.
Whew, that was pretty heavy. Plowman handles new cases, typically working with about 15 families at once. She's one of 28 social workers in a county of more than 180,000 people.
There are things that you can't fathom, on a day-to-day basis. You can't fathom that a parent would do this to their child.
I pushed him into the wall.
Her goal is to keep families together, but she's had to separate about a dozen of them in the past 3 years. Have you ever had doubts about whether or not you should have removed a child from their home?
Oh yeah, there's definitely doubt. Am I doing the right thing? Who's going to suffer from this the most?
In 2017 alone, an estimated 1,720 children died from abuse and neglect in the U.S. More than a quarter of those children were previously known to Child Protective Services agencies. The issue came to light earlier this year with the death of 5-year-old AJ Friend in Illinois.
Investigators located what they believe to be AJ's body, buried in a shallow grave wrapped in plastic.
Police charged his parents with murder. Child welfare workers had been called to their home before. Stories like that frustrate Maine State Senator Bill Diamond, who's been focused on this issue for nearly 2 decades.
We're not making progress.
The former teacher has introduced a bill pushing for a long-term commission to study the problems within his state's Child Protective Services Department.
The kids are being abused right now while you and I are talking. They're being abused terribly. The only reason we don't know who they are is because they haven't died yet.
Experts say caseworkers in many areas are underpaid and overworked. Reports of abuse have increased more than 12% since 2013, partly because of tougher laws requiring the reporting of suspected abuse, along with an increase in calls related to the opioid epidemic. This mother says her addiction began with a prescription for painkillers after oral surgery 15 years ago.
I've never been homeless. I would hate to become homeless, but there are worse things. Not being with my children would be one of them things.
Have you ever had your children taken from you?
Yes.
Here in Outagamie County, the number of kids in foster care has doubled over the past 4 years. But Brittany Plowman says she believes the children in this household are safe for now, with their father at home and with the additional assistance the county is providing. Do you think this issue doesn't get enough attention?
More often than not, it's the bad stuff that surfaces and not the good. And I feel like that needs more attention because there's a lot of good that comes from child welfare. It's not just about removals.
The bottom line here is Child Protective Services workers say it's heart-wrenching to take kids away from their parents and try to avoid it unless it's necessary. They say they can reduce risk, but can't entirely eliminate the possibility that parents or caregivers will make tragic decisions after they leave. So, this hits close to home, I think, because I have a lot of social workers in my family, and you forget just how difficult this work is, and to keep doing it
It does,
They're overworked every day.
Yeah, they're overworked. They're underpaid. There has to be an emotional toll. Absolutely. And these people are staying, especially in Outagamie County, about 3 years on average. But the manager there who oversees this department says that it takes about 2 years just to train them.
Yeah.
So as soon as you train the people that are ready, they leave. They get
lose
burned
them.
out.
Why? They get burned out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when it comes to child protective services, and it also comes to foster care, it's not a one size fit all. I wish there was like something more simpler or easier to say or do, but you have to look at you're dealing with individual people when it comes to the workers, and individual people when you're dealing with the case of the person, their situation. But they should hire more caseworkers, and they should pay them more money, and they should go through training to make sure they understand, what their job is, what they need to do to make sure the child is not going to be in danger. They can't guarantee that nothing will happen to that child because they don't know the mind of the parent themselves. And they need to have better situations or better ways of vetting people who are stepping forward to say that they want to be a foster care parent. They need to vet them in a different way to make sure they're stable, make sure they're not getting into this for the money. If they cannot financially take care of themselves or take care of the kid, you have to think, are they doing this for the money? Are they doing this to get a check? And you don't want to put a child in a situation like that where the people only want them because of the check they're getting, and they can care less about the emotional, mental, physical, and all that, the needs of the child itself. The closest thing I can say that we can get to making this situation better or improving this situation is just to go back to the foundation of the Bible, where there's a husband and a wife, and you don't have kids until you're married, and then you're able to take care of your kids. I know that's not the ideal situation for everyone, but that should be the thing that is taught to kids at a young age. That is the thing that should be looked at and upheld to, the family, get back to family and family values where kids are had because they want those kids and they want to love those kids. They're not having kids because they're going to get a bigger tax break. They're not having kids because now they can apply for more benefits from the government or anything like that. They're having these kids because they want them, they can provide for them, and they can make sure they have a decent life.